Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual lessons. Uh, week 11's assignment is mostly based on functions. So learn Python 2 functions. The Code Academy assignment is pretty good. There's 19 lessons, but they're not too long. There's only like 3 or 4 of them that have like extensive work. The rest are mostly just putting a couple lines here and there. But what I want to talk about first is what functions are in general. So I'm giving you some resources to take a look at inside of our document here. So when you think of functions in general, you think about functions in math. So here is what I mean by functions in math. Good old Wikipedia, right? So I borrowed this little schematic here. I just want you to explain it, right? So any function, whether it's math or computer science, has a clear input, a clear processing, and a clear output. So what is meant by this, right? Kind of, can you explain this in your own words? And then number 2 is provide an example of a math function. So hint, look at this output here, f of x. So come up with your own. Think algebra 1 or algebra 2. Like plug something in, you get an output, right? X and Y, hint, hint. So back to Python. So Python has inputs and outputs. The inputs in a Python function are called arguments. So here is a useful source just for Python functions in general. See, creating a function, all the stuff calling a function. So why don't I copy and paste this into Repel. So remember, Repel, REPL.it. So just to log in, you go here, sign in with your Google account, and then you'll get something that looks like that. So remember, we're using Python 2.7, and you see that in preparation of this week's assignment, I was practicing. So to create your own, remember, you could either click here or click here. So let's do new Repel. We already have Python 2.7 selected. So I'm just going to call this week 11 and then create it. So when we have it created, you see here we're using Python 2.7.16, and this is the console part on the right hand side, and on the left hand side is where we put our code. So over here in the W3 schools, I had selected this. Let's be lazy, copy and paste, copy and paste. And like in the assignment last week, indentation is key for if and else statements, but also for functions, right? So anything that has a colon immediately followed by indentation. So when I backspace here and I enter, it's like the number one way that I do corrections to a lot of your work is by just using backspace and making sure the stuff is indented properly. So if I run this, I get a whole lot of nothing. So to actually run the function, what they refer to as calling a function, you have to type it in the console. So it's named my function. So you either copy and paste or run it, right? So if you see here, there is nothing in the parentheses to provide. There is nothing in the parentheses to provide, so I just press enter, and it says hello from a function. And that makes sense because, look, it says hello from a function. So let's make a function that actually takes in an argument, right? So define add stuff, takes in a number. You know what? What's a great name for number? Number, okay? So number is some dummy variable that I'm going to be using inside of the function called add stuff, okay? So here I'm putting the colon, push enter. So if I want to add stuff, so why don't we take number, which is our dummy variable, right? And let's add 2 to it. Why? just cause. Okay, so if I do that and I run it, I get just this. All right, so if I add stuff, okay, and I put in a number 3, that's what it's looking for. You have to put in a number 4 number. But look, I didn't get anything. So, but I also didn't print anything or return anything. So that's a little bit that you'll learn in Code Academy, is printing and returning stuff. So let's go back over, let's change line 5 to be something. So I can just call print number plus 2. All right, we'll try this again. I'm going to run it. I have to type it over again. Add stuff. And let's give it a 4 this time. And what do we get? 6. And that makes sense because 4 plus 2 is 6. There are 2, you put in an integer, you combine it with an integer. Guess what? Your output's an integer. But there's also another way we can do it. So that one looks like that. And I want you to see the differences in outputs here. So reminder, how do we turn off and on code? Comments. If I want to turn off more than one line of code, we do the 3 quotation marks. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. See how everything between line 3 and line 6 is now commented out. So I'm only going to use this one. Instead of print, let's try return. Okay. And if you notice here, we have 6 is on its own line. And let's see if it looks any different. So here, it's now gone. We're still going to use add stuff just like we did when we were printing it. But let's give it a 4 again. And then now, return to 6. So in Repellent, printing or returning kind of did the same thing. When we learn more about functions or more complex functions, printing just outputs it so that the user can see it, but return has it so that other functions or things can use it later. Maybe you'll take a note of that in the Code Academy lesson. Maybe you won't. When in doubt, return if you want to be able to use that number later. So here I have 1 input, 1 output. Okay. So let's say I wanted to have more than 1 input. Okay. So let's do this as num1, num2. And so here, number is no longer this input, so I need to change this as well. So maybe I just want to add these 2 numbers. So now here, I'm going to change this to num1 plus num2. And what should the output be? Well, if I run it, I don't have anything. So the output will be exactly what I put inside the parentheses. So I'm calling the function add stuff, and it has 1, 2 arguments. So here I'm going to give it 2 and 6. Okay, did I need that space? Probably not. Makes sense. 2 plus 6 is 8. Okay, let's change this. So remember I pushed up on my keyboard. So let's do 6 plus 6.2 and 6.6. Add them together, 8.6. So just like we've seen with math operations here, 9 divided by 6.0, add stuff, took in an integer and a float, and returned a float. Here, integer and float gives you float. But if I had done add stuff with just 2 and 6, like we saw up there, or we would still get 8, right? So here, if I give it something it's not supposed to get, like a string, I get an error, right? And we know that because we can't combine strings and numbers without doing some special string functions. But back to what we're learning. This is a good intro on how a function works.